Thanks, everybody. Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Kamler, and our next guests are the stars and writer-director of the new film, Mickey and the Bear. In it, newcomer Camila Morrone plays Mickey, a high school student living on the fringes with her struggling father, played by James Badge Dale. Annabelle Attanasio's film is heartbreaking, tender, beautiful, a wonder to watch. Let's take a look at Mickey and the Bear.
Going to class.
Let me get a kiss goodbye.
Ew, Eric! So how much this time? Dad, stop! My brain's in there. Did you know that some days I can't even get him to eat?
Do you ever think about leaving Montana?
I'm not going anywhere.
Where you been? Come here. Where you going?
I told you I'm tired.
From what?
This is too much for a kid.
Yeah, well, he's my dad.
Love ya!
It's only a matter of time before she gets as sick of it as you are.
Shut up about things you don't understand.
This isn't so bad.
You got something to say, come out and say it.
Where's my money?
Where's my money?
Everybody, please welcome James Badge Dale, Camila Morrone, and Annabelle Attanasio. Thank you so much for being here, you guys. Congratulations on this film.
Thank you.
It's beautiful, incredible performances by the two of you. Absolutely incredible. Watching the two of you together, I don't know what you did to prepare for this. Usually a movie of this size, people show up on set and they say hi, they shake hands for the first time, and then they start shooting. It feels like there's a real intimacy between the two of you on screen. This is your first film, your first feature, coming off of a few shorts. You've acted a number of times in a number of things. Where did you get the idea for this relationship between father and daughter on the fringes in Montana?
Well, I think the child who becomes a parent is a very universal theme that's not talked about a lot in movies. So I felt very personally obligated to tell this story. It was something that I experienced in a different way growing up. And in addition to that, telling the story, the untold story of veterans' family lives and the way trauma, addiction, and grief affects the unit, the way dependency on pain medication can affect the family unit is something that I also don't see in movies a lot. And so I think the impetus to tell the story came from both a personal place and sort of a desire to expand my horizons and tell a story that wasn't necessarily mine, which is that Montana story.
Did you go to Montana beforehand at all? Were you looking at families or looking for other stories that related to this sort of internal idea that you had about yourself and your own family, but expanded that, as you said?
So in 2014, I got a grant from NYU Gallatin that sent me to do research on veterans' families in Anaconda, Montana. Wow. And I always had the desire to turn that research somehow into a narrative film that people could relate to and that wasn't necessarily so literal and that focused on the girl and not necessarily the father. And then since that trip, I went back several times and really became entrenched in the community out there. We actually show the movie on December 6th out there at the Washoe Theater, which will be really cool.
Are you nervous for that?
No, I'm so excited. We actually showed the film in Missoula a month ago, and it went over so well. I think that there's tremendous power in the representation this film has of that community, and I don't know. I think that the fact that this town is preserved forever in this film is something that's really meaningful to them.
There are so many powerful moments between the two of you, whether it's a moment of levity or a moment of father and daughter just sort of bonding over being father and daughter, or the more tragic moments. But James, you've been at this since you were a kid yourself, right? You've been performing since you were a kid.
It's been a little bit, yeah.
It's been a little bit. And you're a relative newcomer, right? Is that fair to say? I don't know. You could be like,
newcomer.
When you get on set with someone in scenes like this that require a lot of dramatic work, do you generally give them as much distance as you would a performer that's a veteran that's been working for a while, or do you try to get in it and help and coach as much as possible?
Oh, Cammy needs no coaching. She showed up. This woman has such a deep well within her, and she is so prepared and willing to throw down and game. I mean, I had to go back home and do more homework to keep up with her.
Did you expect that?
Did I expect that he would have to go home and do more homework?
Yeah, were you on set with him like, come on, James, do
I was
some
like,
homework
step
here?
up. No, of course, I had seen James's films, and when I found out that he was attached, I was like, oh shit, now I'm really gonna have to perform for this and really step up to the plate. But no, it was, working with an actor that is as talented and has as much of a career as James has, it just only elevates your work, I think. And he, as I've said before, but truly mean it, has just been a great support system on the days that I needed help and the days that I didn't need help. I just found myself looking to him for guidance when I needed it.
Well, okay, James.
Yeah, I just want to say, I mean, what was so important is for us to listen to each other, for us to be present with each other, because all my instincts are going into Hank, and all of Cammy's instincts are going into Mickey, and that is the relationship. So it was just this, we took a week beforehand to really kind of all hang out together and build this trust. And we got to know each other in this in the simple ways of what are the things you like, the things you don't like, what are the things you wear, what kind of music do you listen to, what do you do at a rodeo? I watched her at her first rodeo. I mean, all these things matter and they inform you, and so then you just run with it together,
But so much of Mickey's instincts for the first 2/3 of the film are really in reference to Hank's. She's listening to Hank to find out what she has to do for him, how to take care of him in that moment before the shift comes. So what is it like when you're doing those scenes? I think, for instance, the one in the diner where you're basically lying through your teeth that you wouldn't care if she left you. You wouldn't, I think you said, I wouldn't give a shit, essentially. How do you plan those scenes? How do you work on those scenes? How do you develop that instinct to just play off of him and think about what he's doing?
We had those 5 days before filming, which, as you know, as you said, is a really lucky thing to have in an independent, small budget film, because you don't often get the time to get to know the other actors, and it's like you're meeting on the first day. So having those 5 days to work together was a big blessing, and it really helped us start that relationship of kind of what their life looked like before what we're showing in the film and develop a little bit of history. But in scenes like the diner scene, I just kind of had to take Badge's lead, and we knew where the film was going, so everything until then was just kind of taking the necessary steps into ultimately what ends up happening at the end.
It's such a wonderful scene because the power dynamic is very clear in those moments where she is establishing the power that she's trying to create for herself, and he's trying to establish his own by kind of denying that she has any, when she really in some way has all of the power in the relationship. How is that? Was that found in your research with families, or was that just sort of like this relationship, that is the dynamic, that is the power between them?
Well, I certainly know what it feels like to be silenced in a relationship. I think all women do. And so that was something that really came very naturally for me in terms of writing. In terms of that birthday scene in the diner, she is really trying to assert her voice, and he continually shuts it down to the point where they dine and dash, and to the point where the night really becomes about him, even though it is her birthday. And it comes from a real personal understanding and observation of other human relationships. I have such a love of playwriting and great playwrights, so I think I take a lot of note from the theater as well. And then, I think Cammy and Badge really came to set and infuse scenes like that with so much subtlety and nuance and so much microaggression, so many tiny little moments between the characters that I could have never thought of whilst writing.
I'm getting a little choked up on this entire press day because all these memories are now flooding back to me. And I remember the two of you sitting across from me, and you were wearing a tiara also. And I also really want to point out that not only did Cammy and I become family, Cammy, Annie, and we became this kind of triumvirate that none of us could do it without the other one. And I just want to let you know how much I appreciate that right here.
Don't
right
cry, James.
Okay.
Let's make him cry.
Keep it together.
James, what does that mean when you're in that trust? I think actors often and filmmakers often say there was a trust, there was the three of us, we really trusted each other. But what is a moment where you recognize that trust, where you realize you couldn't have done what you just did if it wasn't for that trust that you felt in this circle?
I don't think I could break it down to a specific moment right now. It's something. It is this kind of ethereal, little magical lightning thing that happens from the beginning, and it goes to the end. I have had it come later on films. I've been in circumstances where I've battled with people, and then through those battles, we've kind of looked at each other and just went, "Wait a minute, now I see you and you see me." But that was not the circumstance here. We really kind of came in from the beginning and wrote it all to the end. I will say what I find so fascinating, and I think there's a lot of this in this film and in Hank, is that I might approach things from this point of view, which can be very male, and Annie would let me run with things, and then she would come in and say something at the end that I had never thought of or never considered, just being the type of person that I am, and it would inform Hank on a whole different level and gave him different colors that I could have never done myself.
Well, because as male as he is, he has been living with women his for the last 17, 20 years, and he is infantilized in a way. He's become infantilized by these women. They have to take care of him, but he still has a recognition of the women around him in some minor respect, maybe, right?
Respect? Well, yeah, I think he has the utmost respect within his means for his daughter.
Yes.
And going
Minor, right? Like,
well, it's complex, I would say, because she is who allows him to move through the world with the bravado that he does, because she takes on a lot of the responsibility and a lot of the pain for him. Without her, he would be a mess. And again, I think that is a very universal theme in relationships, where one person takes on a lot of the pain of the other. And, I think focusing on that person and not necessarily the other, maybe, in the codependent dynamic, the enabler, not necessarily the narcissist, I think is an unusual perspective for a film. And also, about the trust that we had together. I think I remember one of the first times, maybe the first time we met in person, Cammy and I went through the script, and I remember she would voice her feelings and opinions about things. And I remember in that moment, I was like, oh, I can trust her because she's honest. And to have actors like these two who are so imaginative and so instinctual and fearless also be empowered to share how they feel, I knew I could trust them.
Right, the last thing you want is an actor sitting across from you in a script read and nodding and going like, yep, sounds good. And then you get there on the day and they're like, whoa, wait, I don't understand what I'm doing right now. How do
Yeah.
we make this happen?
Yeah, exactly. And that is the person embodying the part. They of all people really understand when something feels phony. And so with both Badge and Cammy, they had this amazing barometer within them when something felt true and something felt false, and they were able to communicate with me. And I think that's part of why we had a really pleasurable time working together, is there was that open dialogue.
What was the process for the two of you to decide to work together? How did it happen?
We had an amazing experience of Cammy, once the movie was going in June, Cammy actually came out to do like a test day, I guess, where we got
Of a self-tape.
off of a self-tape.
In my kitchen.
She did this like phenomenal self-tape, unforgettable, amazing self-tape that I won't gush over too much, but it was really, really stunning. And she came to meet me in person. And what we did was we went through maybe 8 or 10 scenes from the movie, and I kind of operated camera and read Hank, and Cammy would come in. And what I love so much, I just remember this, but like Cammy was so great with objects. So we would be in my kitchen and she would pick up, my set of keys, and she would start making dinner, and she just was so at ease in the environment. And it was after that day that I was like, this is my partner. It was like, I knew this was Mickey, but then beyond that, it felt so clear to me that I had a real partner in Cammy. And I think this movie is a product of creative partnership amongst, two very young people.
You are in every scene of the movie, and as we said, relative newcomer a minute ago. Did that make you nervous? Were you hesitant at all to be essentially the lead and in every frame of the film?
Yeah, I was terrified. And the day before, I was like, why did I sign up to do this? Why do I do this to myself? Why do I torture myself? But that's what actors love to do, is torture themselves. No, I just wanted to play this character. I wanted to challenge myself, and I was absolutely terrified. I've never been in every scene of a movie. I kind of gradually worked up to this. I did my first movie, and I was like number 7 on the call sheet, and then I did my second movie, and I was number 1 and 2 because I split it with someone, and this was like definitely a lot of me on the screen. So there was a responsibility, and I also felt a responsibility to do justice to Mickey and the story that she was telling and the situation that she's in, because obviously it's a very important conversation that we're having today about veterans and the opioid crisis. So, we all wanted to be delicate about it and respectful of the reality of the situation and not take anything for granted or overdo any given thing.
In regards to that, in regards to respect to veterans and the opioid crisis, how worried were you at all in regards to your performance? Because he is doing at times not horrible things. They're understandable. You know where he's coming from, but they're not the right thing, per se. He's not acting in the best of faith at all times.
Right. I think the thing here is there was a sense of erraticism with him, and I took a lot of personal things from my family and my friends, people I've worked with over the years. The opioid and the addiction issues is almost secondary, because that's just you're trying to medicate what the real problem is and what's happening inside you after repetitive brain injuries. And so that was we were talking about this earlier. It's our setting. It's not a film about the opioid crisis.
No.
Although it deserves to be talked about. What this film is about family, and this film is about this girl, but this is the world that we're living in, and that we're dealing in.
Right. It's one of the things that I liked about the film, that it wasn't kind of like constantly calling attention to the fact that it was opiates or that he was a veteran or that it was PTSD.
Right.
It was kind of like you pick that up by listening to the movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
These little things that become very important. These little specific little things that if you're watching for it, you'll see. And if you have a personal experience with that in your life with your friends and family, I think you'll be able to pick up on it and know exactly what that is.
That erraticism, though, is so real when it comes to dealing with addicts in a family. And I don't necessarily know about PTSD, but when it comes to addiction, addicts, as consistent you would think they should be because they're addicted to something, they're actually quite erratic and on edge. And it's terrible for a child to grow up with. Yeah.
I think James did a really good job, and I say this all the time, but I think he did a great job in never being a monster and never being perfect. So I think it's a very big push and pull for the audience member, because at the same time you kind of want Mickey to stay and to take care of him because he needs her and he deserves it, and then the other time you're telling her to run for the hills because he's just not worth it. And I think that in his performance, it's so much. It's never one thing or the other. He's never he's never either of those things, and I think that's what makes it so hard for Mickey to make that ultimate decision.
Yeah, I mean, even in his most monstrous moment, you're not cursing him. You're just kind of like, no, please stop, don't do. It's a different feeling. I want to talk to you for a brief moment before we go to audience Q&A about the cinematography, because I love how intimate and close up it is, and then how in one moment of the film you pull it all back and we're in a God's eye view of the one celebratory, elated, transcendent moment Mickey gets to have in the movie. You suddenly open the whole space up. Can you talk about that decision at all and how you came to that with your DP?
I'm so glad you called out that shot. That was shot from it mimics a crane shot, but it's actually just shot from the roof of a building. With that shot, I was kind of at a loss with how to depict. It's a scene where Mickey and Wyatt, who's her new partner, go to this fair called Alive After 5, which is a fair that Anaconda has each Friday in the summer. And I was kind of at a loss with how to shoot it. I was like, you can do this kind of docu-style and shoot close-ups of everyone, which we did as well. But I remember being very inspired by this artist called Alex Prager, who does a lot of bird's eye view photography and art. And I was like, wouldn't it be so cool to do something that started really tight on Mickey and Wyatt and then expanded to this really boundless sort of sense of this town? Because oftentimes in this movie, it feels very oppressive. So that was kind of the thought process with that shot. In terms of the
Jarring in a way, in a good way. It's a jarring moment in terms of it. The whole space of the film opens up, and you really get inside Camille's head in that moment just via that shot.
Yeah. Well, and also I think partly because I don't come from a film school background, I'm not super dogmatic about cinematography. I really I wanted a visual style to be cohesive, but at the same time, I didn't want to limit us. So there's dolly, there's handheld, there's zooms, there's a lot of static, there's a lot of tableau. So we wanted to kind of play with everything and make it feel cohesive as a whole, but not limit ourselves.
Love the zooms. No one does zooms enough anymore. They're so great.
Yeah.
We have time for some questions from the audience. Who's a question? Right here.
Hi, this question's for Cami. To prepare for this, did you get a chance to talk to caregivers, specifically caregivers of drug addicts or alcoholics?
That's a great question. I did my research mainly through the internet. I actually didn't talk to anyone in person, but it's surprising how much information you can find on the internet. And I picked up some of the traits and attributes of children living with an abuse, and I think that's kind of sprinkled throughout the film. But I didn't want to go too much into playing like the mood, which is obviously abuse, and I didn't want to stick to any one category. So I took the information, digested it, and used it here and there throughout the movie.
One more.
Hi, thanks for being here today. I was curious if any three of you as artists seek inspiration outside of film and television to get into the mindset for a project like this.
I definitely, I love to look to every other medium. I had lots of film references for this movie, but I actually take a lot of inspiration from photography and from music. I had like a 200 song playlist going for this movie before we shot and stuff. So I don't know. I think it's important, especially film encapsulates every medium. It encapsulates literally everything. And so I think it's important to stay open to paying homage to things other than film itself.
I use a lot of film as my reference. Like Annie said, it is the best place to find all that in one. But there were a couple performances that I looked at before this to kind of remind me of the place that I was in, the conversation we were dealing with, you know, the ruralness of being in the middle of Montana in a 6,000 person town. So I definitely used film and TV and some characters that I had developed and seen over my lifetime that I took little things and bits and pieces from everyone.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of music also, and I like to read. So I'm always looking for articles and different books and memoirs. And there was a few things that really affected this, but it's always important to look outside, you know, because it all informs everything. But then it's also the people you meet along the way. You know, like I met people in Montana on the second or third week where I was like, wait a minute, stop, I see something different here, and it should always be evolving. Doesn't matter where you're getting that input. It's just that you're still looking for it.
How do you change things up in terms of your performance when you meet somebody and you can pick up on something, or do you feel like you're 2 weeks in and you have to maintain a continuity of character?
I think at that point you should have done so much work that whatever you might find new is just a little addition, a little more addition. I thankfully haven't been in a position where 2 weeks in I've been like, oh man, I've been doing it all wrong. We need to go back and reshoot. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, I mean, I got to hang out with some of the locals. I mean, Annabelle did such a great job in hiring a lot of locals for the film and people that lived in Anaconda and the neighboring towns. So I got to hang out with some of the high school girls and the girls who grew up there. And yeah, you learn stuff as you're going about the town, about what it was like to be raised there. And it doesn't change what you've already prepared as this character and what you have in mind, but it definitely can give you little tricks here and there as the actor to help either get you back into place or physical characteristics that are true to that town or that age.
How can people see Mickey and the Bear?
Well, if you live in New York, it comes out tomorrow, November 13th, at the Film Forum in the West Village. And then in LA, we come out at the Landmark New Art on November 22nd. And then nationwide after that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. Film
Thank
Forum
you.
tomorrow, and
Thank
then nationwide, LA, and then nationwide in a couple weeks. Everybody
Yep.
give them a huge round of applause for being
Thank
here.
you. Thank you.